My name is Brooke Mercer. I'm 38 years old, and the day my family publicly erased me from my own father's birthday party was the day they made the biggest mistake of their lives. At the time, they thought they had won. They thought I would smile, stay quiet, and keep doing what I had done for years. They thought I would continue carrying their secrets. What they didn't know was that one envelope sitting in my kitchen drawer contained a truth powerful enough to destroy everything they had spent 20 years building. And the craziest part? I hadn't even opened it yet. If someone had asked me a year earlier to describe my family, I would have called us close. Not perfect, not even healthy, but close. I know that sounds ridiculous now. Trust me, I wish I was making this up. I lived in Columbus, Ohio, where I worked as an office manager for a regional construction company. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills. I owned a modest townhouse, I drove a 6-year-old SUV, I had a golden retriever named Daisy who greeted me like I was a celebrity every time I walked through the front door. My life was simple, steady, predictable. I liked it that way. My father, Richard Mercer, had always been my favorite person. When I was little, he taught me how to ride a bike. When I was 16, he helped me buy my first car. When I got divorced at 32, he sat on my porch until 3 in the morning just listening while I cried. Dad wasn't perfect. He worked too much. He avoided conflict. And he had a bad habit of pretending problems would disappear if he ignored them long enough. But he loved me. Or at least, I thought he did. Then there was my younger brother, Gavin. If I was the responsible child, Gavin was the golden child. Growing up, he could do no wrong. If I got an A, people nodded. If Gavin got a C, everyone celebrated his effort. You know the type. The rules never quite applied to him. Somehow, every mistake became someone else's fault. Every failure became a story about why Gavin deserved another chance. By 40, he had already gone through 3 businesses, 2 marriages, and enough borrowed money to buy a small island. And somehow, my parents still treated him like a misunderstood genius. I should have seen it coming. I really should have. The warning signs were there. The first one appeared after Mom died. Losing her changed everything. Dad seemed lost. Not dramatically, not in a movie kind of way. He just got quieter, smaller, like someone slowly turning down the volume on a radio. That's when Gavin suddenly became interested in helping. At first, everyone thought it was wonderful. He started taking Dad to appointments, handling paperwork, managing bills, running errands. Family members praised him constantly. "Look how devoted Gavin is. He's really stepped up. Your mother would be proud." I heard it every week. And honestly, I was proud too. Until little things started feeling strange. One afternoon, I called Dad. "Hey, want to grab dinner?" There was a pause. Then he said something odd. "I should check with Gavin first." I laughed. "Check what?" "He keeps track of my schedule." My smile disappeared. Since when? Dad had never needed anyone tracking his schedule. Not ever. I brushed it off. A few weeks later, I invited him to a neighborhood barbecue. Same answer. "I'll ask Gavin." Then it happened again and again and again. It was like my father needed permission to see me. The whole thing felt wrong. One Sunday, I drove to Dad's house without calling. Big mistake. Gavin answered the door. He didn't look happy to see me. "What are you doing here?" I laughed. "Visiting Dad?" "He isn't feeling well." "Then I'll stay 10 minutes." "He needs rest." Something about his tone immediately put me on edge. I tried stepping around him. He blocked the doorway. Not aggressively, just enough. "Seriously, Brooke, not today." I stared at him. "Since when do you decide who visits our father?" His jaw tightened. For half a second, I saw something flash across his face. Not annoyance, fear. Then it disappeared. Dad asked me to help him manage stress. I couldn't believe it. Manage stress? I wasn't a bill collector. I was his daughter. But I left, because arguing on the porch wasn't going to solve anything. Driving home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Something important. I just didn't know what. Then came the phone call, the one that started everything. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. I was halfway through lunch when my phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number. Normally, I would have ignored it. Instead, I answered. "Hello?" A woman spoke. "Is this Brooke Mercer?" "Yes." "My name is Evelyn Shaw." I had never heard that name before. What she said next nearly made me drop the phone. "I think your father being lied to." Silence. My heart started pounding. What? I shouldn't be calling. Then why call? Another pause, then she lowered her voice. "Because I work at the bank." The world seemed to tilt. "I've watched your brother bring your father in several times." "What about it?" "He does all the talking." I felt cold. "He tells your father where to sign." I stood up from my chair. "Evelyn, what exactly are you saying?" She hesitated. "I think your father believes he's signing one thing." My stomach dropped. And I'm afraid he may be signing something else." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Rain tapped against my office window. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then Evelyn said the sentence that changed everything. "There's a document your brother doesn't know I saw." My mouth went dry. "What document?" "I can't discuss details over the phone." "Please, I shouldn't be calling." "Then why call?" Her answer came immediately. "Because someone should know." The line went silent. Then she added 4 words. 4 words I'd replay in my head 1,000 times afterward. "Check the lake property." And she hung up. Just like that. No explanation, no details, nothing. I stood frozen in my office. The lake property. My grandparents' cabin. The place Dad loved more than anywhere else on earth. The place he promised would stay in the family forever. No way. Seriously? What did that have to do with anything? I tried calling Evelyn back. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. That night, I barely slept. Every possibility ran through my mind. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she was confused. Maybe Gavin was handling legitimate paperwork. But deep down, I already knew. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The next morning, I drove to the county records office before work, and what I found there would prove that my family wasn't just hiding something, they were hiding everything. The county records office sat inside an old brick building downtown. Nothing fancy, just fluorescent lights, worn floors, and people quietly looking up documents that could change lives. I arrived before they opened. That should have been my first clue about how nervous I was. Normal people don't wait outside government offices at 8 in the morning. But I wasn't feeling normal. Not after Evelyn's phone call. Not after hearing those 4 words. Check the lake property. The moment the doors opened, I walked straight to the public records terminal. My hands were shaking. I typed in my father's name. Richard Allen Mercer. Dozens of records appeared. Mortgages, tax filings, old permits. Then I found it. The cabin, my grandparents' lake house, the place where every Thanksgiving happened, the place where Dad taught me to fish, the place he swore would belong equally to both of his children. I clicked the newest filing, and my stomach dropped. Transfer of ownership. Recorded 11 months earlier. Grantee, Gavin Mercer. Consideration? $10. $10. I stared at the screen. No way. I opened the document, read it again, then a fourth time. Nothing changed. The cabin was gone, legally transferred. My father no longer owned it. My brother did. I felt physically sick, not because of the property, because of what it meant. Dad would never have done this willingly. Never. The cabin wasn't just land. It was family history, memories, tradition, everything. And somehow, Gavin had ended up owning it outright? I printed the document, then another, then every filing connected to the transfer. The clerk probably thought I was preparing a lawsuit. At that moment, maybe I was. I just didn't know it yet. Driving to work, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. I answered immediately. Hello? It was Evelyn. Her voice sounded tense. Did you find it? Yes. A pause. Then she sighed. I was afraid of that. How did this happen? I don't know everything. What do you know? Another pause. Then she said something strange. That's not the only transfer. The steering wheel nearly slipped from my hands. What? There are more. My heart stopped. What more? I can't discuss bank records. Evelyn, I'm serious. What are you trying to tell me? She lowered her voice. Look deeper. Then she hung up again. I couldn't believe it. More transfers? More property? More secrets? What the hell was going on? That evening, I drove past Dad's house. I didn't stop. I just parked across the street. The lights were on. Dad sat alone in the living room, watching television, looking smaller than I remembered, older, tired. And suddenly something hit me. What if he didn't know? What if Gavin had been manipulating him for months, maybe years? The possibility terrified me. The next few days became an obsession. Every spare minute went into research. Public records, property filings, business registrations, financial disclosures. Anything connected to Gavin. And the deeper I looked, the worse it got. I found an LLC, then another, then a third, all connected to Gavin, all connected to properties Dad once owned, properties now controlled through companies Dad's name no longer appeared on. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't one transfer. This was a pattern, a system, a plan, and someone had been executing it quietly, very quietly. Then came the first major twist. I discovered a witness. Pure accident. I was reviewing old filings when a name appeared repeatedly. Sandra Whitmore. A witness. Pure accident. I was reviewing old filings when a name appeared repeatedly. Sandra Whitmore, notary public. The same notary had witnessed multiple transfers.
every single one. I found her office number, called immediately. To my surprise, she answered. I introduced myself. The line went silent. Then she said, "I've been expecting this call." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" I wondered how long it would take. For what? For someone in your family to notice. I nearly dropped the phone. You knew? I knew something felt wrong. Why didn't you say anything? Her answer stunned me. Because your father kept insisting everything was fine. That didn't make sense. What exactly happened? Sandra took a breath. Then she told me something that changed everything. Every signing appointment looked the same. Dad would arrive. Gavin would do all the talking. Every question got answered by Gavin. Every explanation came from Gavin. Every discussion happened through Gavin. And your father? I asked. He seemed confused. I froze. Confused. Not forgetful, not distracted. Confused. Did he understand the documents? Long silence. Then she answered carefully. I don't think he fully did. I couldn't speak. The room felt smaller. What are you saying? I'm saying your father trusted someone. My eyes filled with tears. And that person may not have deserved it. That night, I sat awake until almost sunrise, thinking, remembering, replaying years of conversations. Then another memory surfaced, one I'd completely forgotten. 6 months earlier, Dad had called me, late at night, almost midnight. He sounded upset, lost, confused. He asked me a strange question. "Brooke, did your mother ever mention another account?" At the time, I thought he was tired, grieving. Now it felt different, very different. The next morning, I searched again and found the second bombshell. A trust, not Gavin's, Dad's, created 7 years earlier, long before Mom died, long before Gavin started managing anything, long before all this chaos. I ordered a copy. 3 days later, it arrived, and when I opened it, everything changed. Dad's original estate plan divided everything equally, 50% to me, 50% to Gavin. No favoritism, no special treatment, no exclusions, nothing. Exactly what Dad always promised. Then I noticed something else. An amendment, created 16 months earlier. My hands started shaking. I turned the page and nearly stopped breathing. My name was gone, completely gone, removed from everything. No note, no nothing, just erased, like I never existed. I stared at the paper. I couldn't believe it. Dad would never do this. Never. Not after everything we'd shared. Not after a lifetime together. Something wasn't right. Something was terribly wrong. Then the phone rang. It was my cousin Lauren, and the first words out of her mouth were, "Brooke, there's something you need to know about your father." My heart sank. What happened? It's not what happened. Then what? She hesitated, then finally said, "He's been seeing doctors." I froze. What kind of doctors? Another pause. Then came the words that explained everything. Memory specialists. The room spun. Memory specialists. Suddenly, every strange conversation, every forgotten detail, every moment of confusion, every odd signing, every unexplained transfer, every missing document started making horrifying sense. My father wasn't just grieving, he was declining, and someone had been taking advantage of it. Someone very close to him, someone he trusted, someone who thought nobody would ever find out. And the worst part? I was finally starting to understand how big the betrayal really was. Because the cabin wasn't the prize, the trust wasn't the prize, the businesses weren't the prize. They were only pieces, pieces of something much larger, something worth millions, something hidden for decades, something my mother had secretly protected her entire life. And according to Lauren, there was one person who knew exactly where it was. A woman named Margaret Hale, my mother's oldest friend, the keeper of a secret buried more than 20 years ago. A secret capable of destroying Gavin's entire plan. And according to Lauren,
I met Margaret Hale 3 days later. She was 74 years old. Sharp eyes, perfect posture, the kind of woman who notices everything. She lived alone in a small house outside Dublin, Ohio. When she opened the door, she studied me for several seconds. I nodded. She sighed heavily, then looked out the window. I was hoping this day would never come. What day? The day somebody finally had to clean up Richard's mess. That surprised me. My father? Your father was a good man. She paused. But good men sometimes avoid hard truths until it's too late. I leaned forward. What truth? Margaret disappeared down a hallway. A minute later, she returned carrying an old brown box. My pulse quickened. She placed it on the table, then slowly opened it. Inside were letters, documents, photographs, bank statements, and one sealed envelope. The moment I saw my mother's handwriting, my stomach dropped. Margaret pushed the envelope toward me. Your mother left that with me 17 years ago. I stared at it. What is it? Insurance. What kind of insurance? Margaret gave a sad smile. The kind a mother leaves when she knows one child can't be trusted. My heart nearly stopped. What? She nodded. Your mother knew. Knew what? About Gavin. The room went silent. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, written by my mother, addressed to me. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The date was 17 years old, long before any of this started, long before Mom got sick, long before Dad's memory problems. I began reading, and by the second paragraph, tears blurred my vision. Because my mother knew. She knew everything. For years. She knew Gavin lied. She knew Gavin stole. She knew Gavin manipulated people. She knew he used charm to get money. She knew he blamed everyone else for his failures. Most importantly, she knew my father would always protect him. Always. No matter what. The letter explained everything. Mom had spent years quietly moving certain investments into protected accounts, not to hide them from me, to protect them from Gavin. There was more, a lot more. Properties, investment accounts, trust holdings, assets nobody in the family even knew existed. My father had built them over decades. The total value exceeded $4 million. $4 million. I couldn't believe it. Then I reached the final page and found the sentence that changed everything. If Gavin ever attempts to take control of your father's estate, show Margaret the second key. I looked up. What second key? Margaret smiled, for the first time. The one hidden in your mother's jewelry box. I nearly laughed. This sounded insane, like a movie. But 2 days later, after searching through old belongings Dad still kept, I found it. A tiny brass key taped beneath the bottom drawer, exactly where Mom described. No way. Seriously? At that point, I was done being surprised. Margaret led me to a safe deposit box. Inside were original estate documents, signed years earlier, witnessed properly, stored securely, protected from alteration. And buried inside them was the final twist. The amendment removing me from the trust, the one Gavin had been relying on, wasn't valid. Never had been. According to the original estate plan, any amendment made after a documented cognitive decline required independent medical certification. Dad's records showed symptoms months before the amendment. The certification never happened. The amendment violated the trust's own terms. It could be challenged, and likely overturned. Suddenly, Gavin's entire empire looked very different, very fragile, very temporary. When our attorney reviewed everything, he smiled, a real smile, the kind lawyers get when facts are on their side. You have a strong case. Strong? That was an understatement. Over the next few months, discovery began, and that's when Gavin's world started collapsing. Bank records surfaced, emails surfaced, financial transfers surfaced, witnesses surfaced, one after another. Then came the biggest shock. Grant, my brother's former business partner, the man who had spent years defending him, changed sides completely. Turns out, Gavin had cheated him, too, for years. Grant brought documents, contracts, recordings, messages, evidence everywhere. Each new piece painted the same picture: manipulation, deception, control. The truth became impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Gavin kept acting confident, erratic, smug. He thought he'd outsmarted everyone. He thought Dad would protect him. He thought I would eventually give up. Big mistake, because the final showdown arrived sooner than anyone expected. At my father's 75th birthday party, the entire family attended. Cousins, aunts, uncles, neighbors, everyone. Gavin practically hosted the event, walking around like he already owned everything, like victory was guaranteed. Then the attorneys arrived. The room changed instantly. Conversation stopped, smiles disappeared. People sensed something. They just didn't know what yet. Dad sat quietly near the fireplace, older, frail, but present, very present. For the first time in months, he looked clear, focused, aware. The attorney stood, opened a folder, and began speaking. No drama, no yelling, just facts, one after another. Trust documents, financial records, witness testimony, medical reports, property transfers, everything. The room fell completely silent. You could hear glasses touching tables, people breathing, nothing else. Then came the final reveal: the fraudulent amendment, the invalid transfers, the hidden assets, and the original trust, the one my mother had protected all along. The attorney finished, closed the folder, and looked directly at Gavin. You were never the sole beneficiary. Silence.
absolute silence. Then Gavin exploded. Accusations, shouting, blame, everyone else's fault. Exactly like always. Only this time, nobody followed him. Nobody rescued him. Nobody defended him. Because the evidence was sitting right there for everyone to see. Then something happened I will never forget. My father stood. Slowly, painfully, but he stood. The room instantly quieted. Dad looked at Gavin for a long time. His eyes filled with tears. Not angry tears, heartbroken tears. Then he spoke. One sentence, just one. You should have trusted that I loved both my children. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Gavin looked stunned. For the first time in his life, there was no argument, no excuse, no escape. Nothing. A week later, settlements began. Within months, ownership structures were corrected, assets were restored, trust provisions enforced, and Gavin walked away with far less than he'd spent years trying to steal. But here's the thing. The money wasn't the victory. Not even close. The real victory happened 6 months later. Dad and I were sitting on the dock at the lake cabin, the same place where he'd taught me to fish when I was 8, the same place I thought I'd lost forever. Sunset reflected across the water. The air smelled like pine trees. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Dad looked at me. I'm sorry. 2 words. That's all. No speeches, no excuses, no explanations. Just honesty. And somehow that meant more than everything else combined. I squeezed his hand, and for the first time in years, the weight I'd been carrying finally disappeared. Dad passed away 18 months later, peacefully, surrounded by people who truly loved him. When the estate settled, everything happened exactly as my parents originally intended, fairly, equally, honestly, just like it should have from the beginning. As for Gavin, I hear from him occasionally. Birthday texts, holiday messages, short conversations. Nothing more. Some bridges can be repaired. Others can only be acknowledged, then left behind. Today, the cabin still belongs to the family. My family. Not because somebody won, not because somebody lost, but because the truth finally got louder than the lies. And if there's one thing this whole nightmare taught me, it's this. The people who manipulate others often believe they're the smartest person in the room. For a while, they might even be right. But eventually, facts catch up. Eventually, witnesses speak. Eventually, secrets surface. Eventually, the truth walks through the door. And when it does, it doesn't have to yell. It just has to exist. Because lies need constant protection. The truth doesn't. The truth simply waits. And sooner or later, it wins.